You don't notice a forest dying until you're already inside it. And somewhere along Highway 168, a winding two-lane road that climbs nearly 6,000 feet through the Sierra Nevada, that line became impossible to miss. It begins as a feeling before it becomes a sight. The kind of unease you can't name, like staring at a word you've seen 1,000 times and suddenly forgetting how to pronounce it. At first, the forest looks familiar, until it doesn't. A hillside in the distance shifts from deep green to a muted rust red, a color that shouldn't exist in a living pine forest. A mile later, another hillside follows. And then, almost without realizing it, you've crossed a threshold. Every tree around you has turned the same sickening shade, as if the entire landscape surrendered in unison. The transition doesn't hit like a shockwave. It hits like recognition. The moment your brain stops trying to blame the light, the season, or your own eyes, and accepts that you're looking at something collapsing in perfect coordination. From the road, the pattern looks unnatural. Ridge after ridge fading in a straight, continuous line, almost as if something moved through the forest with intention, killing as it went. You don't see what caused it. You only see what's left behind, and you smell it. Locals say you can smell a dying ridgeline before you see it. Dry resin and sour sap hanging in the air like a warning. They call it the scent of failure. But failure implies a fight. These trees never had a chance. Needles fall around you in slow, steady drifts. Autumn every day, no matter the season. The ground stays soft with dead needles, but the forest doesn't sound like autumn. It barely sounds like anything at all, because what dies first isn't the needles. It's the noise. That silence is the real warning sign, and it's spreading faster than anyone realized. Stress begins to fall. Not storms, not lightning, just thirst. A thirsty tree produces more resin, thick and amber, trying to protect itself. But that protection carries a smell, sharp, chemical, impossible to hide. To the wrong kind of listener, it's a beacon, and the first to hear it is tiny. A beetle, no bigger than a punctuation mark, lands on the bark and begins to chew. Then others arrive, in ones, then in swarms. Within hours, the air hums with wings, hundreds surging into thousands, a sound like rain that never touches the ground. They carve tunnels through the outer bark, aiming for the thin inner layer that carries the tree's lifeblood, the place where water and nutrients should be flowing. Every bite sends out another signal, a whispered invitation to the rest of the swarm. The beetles are the messengers. The betrayal rides in on what they carry. A blue-stained fungus that floods the tree's inner arteries, its own xylem, staining the wood an ashen blue-gray, spreading like a thrombosis that permanently blocks the water's path. The tree can't run, it can't fight, and it can't stop signaling, which leaves one question that no one can quite answer. If a living thing can't stop broadcasting its own weakness, is its death an accident or an execution? A healthy forest is never truly quiet. There's always a pulse beneath the canopy, soft rasping beneath the leaves, predators scraping in hidden bark corridors, a flickerwing buzz that stitches the background together. But when the beetles move in, that noise floor drops. Not all at once. Silence spreads like a shadow. First one tree, then a cluster, then a slope. The sound of the forest starts to tear apart, leaving pockets where life simply stops sounding. And the immediate victims aren't the trees. They're the animals that hunt or nest by sound. Creatures whose entire survival math is built on rustling leaves, faint wing beats, or the echo of movement. The California spotted owl suddenly finds its home reduced to fragmented islands of noise surrounded by overwhelming quiet. Predators lose the cues they need to track prey. Prey lose the cues they need to escape. The forest isn't just dying, it's forgetting how to communicate. As more trees fall silent, the landscape shifts from green to gray. Sunlight cuts through the dead branches, turning once dim shadows into harsh, open light. From a distance, the land almost glows, but with the cold clarity of a bone exposed to air. And beneath that brightness, the real damage begins. The forest floor starts to bake. Without the living canopy to shield it, the soil dries fast, so fast it loses the ability to absorb water. The next rain won't soak in. It will strip the hillside, dragging sediment into creeks and collapsing entire aquatic habitats. The silence isn't just spreading, it's destabilizing the ground. Under the glare, life hesitates. Sap stiffens. Ore cracks. It dries. It hardens. That's the final twist of a knife. The trees that were too stressed to fight the beetles are now too dry to survive the sun. A dead forest doesn't just stand there. It becomes fuel. A match dropped in the wrong week won't just start fire. It will finish what the silence started. When a forest is this dry, Ignition doesn't need drama. Sometimes it's a lightning strike. Sometimes it's a metal chain dragging behind a truck. Other times, just a branch falling at the wrong angle. But once the spark lands, the forest behaves differently. The dead pines don't burn like live ones. They burn vertically, fast, clean, and intensely, because the needles are gone and the trunks stand like open chimneys. Fire climbs them in seconds. And above these dead columns, another problem forms. Heat rises quickly over beetle kill zones, creating unstable air, turbulence that pulls oxygen upward like a pump. Now the fire isn't spreading out. It's spreading up, building its own weather. Columns of rolling heat and wind spiraling skyward. Fire crews know this shift instantly. On the line, even the air turns against them. A calm afternoon can snap into an ember storm without warning. Those embers travel shockingly far, half a mile, sometimes more, jumping ridgelines and starting new fires in places that aren't even burning yet. This is why firefighters say the Sierra Nevada now has 2 fires every time there's one. The second one is airborne. It becomes a self-feeding system. Dead fuel, rapid vertical burn, convective lift, ember spread, new ignition, more dead fuel. And the question no one likes to ask out loud begins creeping into the edges of the conversation. What do you do when an entire forest becomes the fuse? Fire crews don't talk about winning these fires anymore. They talk about holding, a word that sounds simple until you stand on the line itself. It means drawing a boundary in a landscape that doesn't want boundaries, choosing which ridge lives and which one burns, which homes are defensible and which are already lost. Some days, that line is a road. Other days, it's nothing more than a strip of scraped earth, 6 feet wide against a fire front thousands of feet tall. But the long-term battle starts years before a spark flies. Restoration teams play a kind of ecological Jenga, never sure which move will steady the tower and which will bring it down. Thinning removes dense, stressed trees to lower the fuel load, but it also exposes survivors to more heat stress. Every cut is a calculated wound. Satellites track the beetle waves, mapping where the next collapse will begin. Crews deploy synthetic pheromone traps to confuse incoming swarms. Researchers test fungal blockers aimed at stopping the blue stain thrombosis before it spreads. Yet, every solution is a gamble. Each one works only in narrow windows, on limited scales, and all of them require sacrificing a piece of the forest to save what remains. On the ground, suppression isn't dominance. It's negotiation, working with an ecosystem whose rules changed while humans weren't looking. Crews set backburns, fighting fire with fire to star the front of oxygen. Aircraft release long red arcs of retardant that look decisive from the sky. But on the line, even the air turns against them. Every briefing ends the same way, with a map that's already changed before sunrise. When an ecosystem is already failing, when every solution carries risk, and when your resources are exhausted, what do you protect when even protection leaves a scar? And what do you sacrifice to keep anything alive at all? When a forest dies, the land remembers, but people forget. That's not a complaint. It's a physical fact. Trees are the first line of weather, water, and memory in a mountain ecosystem. Remove them, and something else moves in to occupy the cleared ground. Across the Sierra Nevada, where pines once formed a high, green cathedral, the doorway to a new regime is already opening. Oaks and chaparral, shrubs built for heat and drought, are the most obvious successors. They don't recreate the old forest. They reconfigure the climate of a place. Shallower roots, earlier leaf drop, and a ground cover that bakes and rebounds on a different rhythm. Where there was interception and slow melt, there will be quicker runoff and flashier streams. The watershed changes its mind. That shift has physics attached. Snow that once rested in dense canopy pockets now melts faster in exposed openings. Soil that was held in place by century-old roots becomes loose and impatient. Springs reseed. Creeks run lower in August. The rhythm of a summer storm changes. More mud in the channels, less water in the pools. The landscape's plumbing rewrites itself, and human schedules, irrigation, reservoirs, river runs, have to be recalibrated to a new, drier baseline. But the deeper loss is psychological. Generations imprint on the contours of a place. Children learn what a normal forest sounds like, smells like, looks like. When that acoustic and visual blueprint erodes within a single lifetime, the next generation never forms that map. They inherit a different sky. Scientists call one outcome an ecological glass ceiling. Even if you replant, the climate above the seedlings is now harder, hotter, and less forgiving. Seedlings that might have become pines in the 20th century stall or flip into more drought-tolerant species. The old forest isn't just gone. It can't come back the same way. So what does this mean for us? We can thin and burn and plant and monitor. We can buy time. But time is not the same as return. When the map of a childhood forest fades on a satellite and then in memory, there's a final question that isn't about blame or policy. It's about memory itself. If the forest you remember disappears in your lifetime, will it haunt you? Or will you eventually forget it ever existed?